Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where we appreciate the form in Transformers. Today I'm doing things a little bit different for me, I guess, in that I'm actually covering something that came out fairly recently in a timely manner. That's right, we're looking at Studio Series Ironhide. The reason I'm breaking from protocol and covering this guy now as opposed to waiting until I go through other stuff that I already had queued up is because I really want to customize this guy a bit, and I can't really do a figure study video on him once the customization's done, so yeah, I'm just basically doing this video now so that once it's done, I can start painting him. I'm weird like that, I don't know. I've actually always wanted to get a movie Ironhide figure, and I really wanted to get the leader class for a really long time. I was a little put off by the grayish blue body that he had, but still thought it was a cool figure, but it's just like so ridiculously expensive. Even the knockoffs were expensive. So I kind of held off, and then I saw the movie Masterpiece Ironhide, which I have thoughts on that, which I will get into later. And yeah, I actually thought Studio Series Ironhide looked to be the movie Ironhide figure for me, and I think I was pretty much spot on with that initial assessment. This is probably going to be the movie Ironhide for me. And he's got his weapons on the back there. The main reason I have them on the back like that is because this is one of those instances where I think putting the weapons on the back of a vehicle, even though it's just storage, doesn't really integrate. I think this actually looks better than not having them on there because you take them off, then like, okay, it looks fine like this, but then you start to notice this nonsense back here. Like everybody who does a video on this figure, I wish they had done something here. Like they could have had a panel right here, I think, that folds down to cover that up and just folds up to clean up when going into the robot mode, but it is what it is. No fixing that, really. Also, mine's a little scuffed up back there, but it's okay. This looks fine, I just think it looks a little bit better when you, there we go. I just think it looks a little bit better with that stuff in the back. I don't know. It's like a rocket engine or something, even though I know it's guns. Anyway, there's the mass of guns that Ironhide can use, and we're just going to put those off to the side, and we won't be seeing those again until we get to the robot mode. As for the truck, it's a big GMC truck, and it's a little bit too big when compared to, say, Studio Series Optimus Prime, because, I mean, look at that. That's a little bit ridiculous. I know that they're meant to scale in robot mode more than vehicle mode, but like, my goodness, this is just like a regular truck, more or less, and it seems like it's bigger than a semi. I mean, I'm not a scale junkie or anything like that, so it doesn't really bother me, but it is something to point out, I think, because the scale is so ridiculously off. But anyway, there's not a lot of detail here as far as paint goes, but what's there does work. I just really would like to go in here and clean some of it up, because like you can see there's like little bits of detail molded in there with like the lights on the sides of the rear wheel wells, the rear bumper, the Autobot logo on the tailgate, which I think is pretty cool. And the smokestacks painted, which is nice. Taillights painted, which is nice. And you can see the doors are molded. There's the windows. And coming around to the front, that's where the truck got most of the paint. And I understand why, because this section right here is actually visible in robot mode, so it is important that that does get some paint on it. I just want to go in and do some stuff myself a little bit. And they even got the lights on top, which do look good. I mean, the truck mode for Ironhide as well as the robot mode have the same thing going for them in that there's a lot of black here, but there are just enough small details that have been painted that they really stand out in the black, and it kind of works, even though it's not super in-depth with the paint. So yeah, I mean, I would like to clean this thing up eventually with a few more little paint details here and there in truck mode, but it's still pretty darn solid. The only other thing that's sort of unfortunate is they used a nice clear plastic. I say nice, I mean nice. They used a clear plastic for the windows. You all know how I feel about that probably at this point. And what I don't really like about this is you get Ironhide's face peeking through the windshield. And that's just... Arguably, maybe this is an homage to the G1 toy that had that weird face in the windshield, but really, I kind of want to go in here and not paint the windows, but just tint them. Like, make them a darker color so that it's harder to see through them. But, I don't know. That's what it is for now. and that's how it will stay for now. Size-wise, I guess it's about Voyager-ish in size. If we get Samus out of the way here, you can see that it's definitely longer than a deluxe. Maybe a little bit, like not... it's hard to say. I think the truck is about as wide as the this mashup of robot bits. But, yeah, it's not a huge Voyager, but it's an okay size. Still weirdly larger than Optimus Prime. At least it seems larger. But like I said, I don't care about scale. So yeah, aside from wanting to touch up the paint here and there, that's about all I can say about Studio Series Ironhide's vehicle modes. So let's get to that robot mode. And there we have Studio Series Ironhide in robot mode. And, like I said, with the truck mode, it's sort of like a lot of black with just a few areas here and there with a little bit of color added to just make them stand out. And I think it works. I still really want to get in here and paint some more details on this guy because I think more details will definitely benefit. There's not a ton of paint on here, obviously, but I think what they did actually works really well. This is more just me wanting to push it a little bit further. I feel like if I weren't on that weird customizing kick right now, I would be fine with this paint job. Because the bits of color that are in here do pop really nicely, like the silver up on the shoulders, the details for the truck hood. There's a little bit in the chest there, and the pelvis, and then just a little bit down there to just kind of break it all up. And I think that does work very nicely. Though I will say, as with virtually everyone else, I kind of wish that something else happened with this bumper. I'm fine with it being there. I just wish that these either hinged up and kind of filled in up here a little bit. Not that I think this needs it, but like just to kind of clean that up a little. Or if they hinged back and kind of into the waist, because I mean, he doesn't have a waist because of the way everything transforms, so it's not like you'd need him to be able to bend. I kind of wish they had done a little bit something else with this, but it really doesn't bother me that much. And I feel like once this guy's properly painted, maybe if I get around to it, then this won't be as noticeable either. Though it is kind of funny because if you look at it like this, it looks like he's got some weird smiley face with like eyes, a smiley mouth, and like a weird little blunt nose. But it does look good. This is a really nice representation of movie Ironhide, I think. And getting into a little bit about why I feel like this is probably the movie Ironhide for me versus the movie Masterpiece version, all the promotional shots I've seen of movie Masterpiece Ironhide make his head look enormous. I'm usually fine with proportions being off a little bit here and there, but like all of the pictures I was seeing of movie Masterpiece Ironhide made his head look so disproportionately large to the rest of his body. And I think that was actually movie accurate to a degree, but every time I looked at him, I just couldn't help but think of like a swollen Muppet. This, I think, looks a lot better. I mean, I'm not a fan of movie Ironhide's head sculpt in itself, because it's just kind of which we'll get into when we bring it in closer, but I'm much more into the proportions here. I think those work a lot better. And I also like to take these, and I don't know if the default is to have them facing like straight out like this, but I like to bend them in a little bit at an angle, and I think that just looks better. So yeah, that's that's what I do to to my Ironhide, and I think it cleans up the torso a little bit better. But I think the proportions are fine as they are. He's a cool guy. Definitely a cool guy. I'm glad I finally got my hands on a movie Ironhide. I am not a big fan of movie Ironhide's head or face. It just looks kind of messy, and I've just never been a fan of the design. I've always liked this, the truck hood kind of coming apart to make shoulder pads. I always thought that looked really cool. Just not a fan of his head. That said, I think what's here is fine. It only really bothers me when I get up close. It's this weird, blunted, not really any nose. His eyes are a little bit crooked, which I know is part of the design. It's not like an error or anything like that. I'm just not a fan. His head looks messier than most movie heads, and that's saying something. But when you look at it from a distance, like that, it doesn't really bother me because the black and the silver up there just mixes nicely with the rest of the black on the figure, and you don't really notice all the weird facial details that are kind of eh. So I think because of that, it helps me appreciate the size of this guy a little bit more too, because I think if he was bigger, that head would be more obvious and it would bother me more. But I will say, I like the detailing they got going on in there. There's a lot of nice silver that's picked out. And then we come to the accessories, which pull apart and become separate arm blasters, just like in the movie. But before I do that, I just want to show off my preferred thing, which I know it's not accurate, but I just kind of like it. So the way these work is they break apart and they flip to the arms, which I will be showing off. But you can also take this tab here, tab it in there, and that's what gets you this gun engine block thing. And it's actually a very strong tab, so you don't have to worry about it falling off. The reason I like that is because you've got this peg right here that's supposed to peg into the side of his elbows, but can also go into his fist. So just line that up, peg it in, and just give him one really large gun. And I kind of like the one really large gun look. I know it's not accurate to the movie or anything like that, but I just think it looks cool. But anyway, that can work on either hand, so that's good. So just break these apart, and it's easy to tell where they go because you want this peg to be at the top, and then of course you want the gun facing forward, so it's easy to tell which arm these each peg into, and you just peg them in, and there's even like a little thing for the windows that hang off the forearms to go, which is pretty cool that they accounted for that, because that would have been annoying if they hadn't. And yeah, that just pegs in, and now he's all kitted out with his blasters, and it looks good. Actually, one thing I neglected to mention with the non-blaster version, his arms do look a little bit scrawny without the guns attached, or without a gun somewhere, but this is a good movie Ironhide look, I think. Yeah. I very much dig that. And I do like the added color that the guns bring to him with like the silver and the gray. In terms of size as a robot, he's bigger than a deluxe, but I think this counts as a little small for a Voyager, just height-wise, but he is bulky. I do like how he's got an overall kind of beefy silhouette, especially with the blasters attached. Next to Optimus, he is definitely shorter. Let's adjust this here a little bit. There we go. So yeah, next to Optimus, definitely a bit shorter, which is weird because the truck is significantly larger than it should be when you put it next to the semi-truck mode, but then Optimus is noticeably taller than Ironhide in robot mode, so it's like a weird trade-off. But, you know, they're toys, and the movie designs weren't exactly physically possible in any way. Now these two standing next to each other, I'll get into it when I do the video on Prime there, but his colors are so muted. He lacks the visual punch that Ironhide has because, yeah, he's all black, but like that silver and those little bits of orange really stand out and give just a little bit more pop to the figure in robot mode, whereas Prime is just, it's like someone dialed down the exposure and saturation on him somewhere. Kind of wish there was just a little bit more contrast to the colors that were in Prime, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll deal with this when I actually talk about Prime on his own. Now, before I close things out, I realized I did a pretty bad job of talking about the texture that Ironhide has going, and there's quite a lot of it. It's hard to tell because so much of him is just one solid black color, but he does actually have a lot of nice molded detail in there, especially the legs, because that's where a lot of stuff is hiding in truck mode. And I think that'd be cool to paint, just saying. And the chest is nicely detailed and actually has a fair bit of, it's like a little bit of silver trim in there, and I can't quite tell if that's meant to be like dry brushing or something in the center, but that's definitely nice. And like I said, I really like how the truck hood just kind of splits apart and becomes shoulder pads for him. And I like the silver for these, I think those are just the, whatever the tire's attached to. I don't know what they're called because I'm not a car guy. And you've also got some more of that Bayverse style mechanical mess detail for the arms there. And I think that's kind of cool how Ironhide spreads his alt mode out on his robot mode, where like his legs and arms are primarily this like robot-y mess, and then most of the alt mode is just like up along his shoulders. It's an interesting way to do things. Anyway, I think that is going to do it for Studio Series Ironhide. So what do you all think about this guy? Have you had a chance to get a hold of him yet? I know he's kind of difficult to find right now. He's kind of in that weird void between just being announced and being available everywhere. I managed to luck out and get him on Toy Dojo like a little less than a week ago. I was just browsing, saw him pop up as a new release, and was just like, add to cart. I just jumped on it. It was available for a couple of days. He has since sold out as of this recording, but I know he's starting to pop up in other places. Like I think the Chosen Prime has him available packaged with Studio Series Optimus. So, you know, he's getting there. I think another week or two, he might actually start popping up in a few more places. Don't hold me to that. That's just a theory, but based on what I've noticed, I think he's going to start showing up in more places soon. Anyway, whether you've gotten a hold of Studio Series Ironhide or not, what do you think of this guy? How would you say he stacks up to the other movie Ironhides? Because, I mean, I've only owned this one, so I can only compare him via other videos and pictures that I've seen, but I still feel like this guy's going to give Movie Masterpiece a run for his money. But that's just me. In terms of detailing, do any of you think that it would be... I mean, obviously, it's always nice that they do more paint, but, like, do any of you think, like, he's just not painted enough for what he is? Is this just too blank? Does anyone else out there generally not like Ironhide's movie head design? And can anyone think of a good way to deal with that bumper? Because you kind of need it to clip the torso to the lower half, but it's just a little unsightly. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to comment down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And while you're at it, also feel free to like or subscribe. Any of those things would make me a happy Rob. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.